Welcome to today's podcast interview. I brought on Adam Hart. Adam, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Heather. Appreciate it.
For those new, please get a little background. Where do you live and what do you do?
I live on the west coast of Canada, about 45 minutes up from Vancouver in a town called Squamish. And I am a transformation coach focused on nervous system regulation and supporting people to get unstuck, mostly busy parents like myself who just want to feel more nourished in their lives.
It just came to mind how you said that was,
Mm.
I think a lot of the content out there is very surface level, the hustle and grind, the push mentality. But I'm curious because I know we're going to talk about nervous system and all self-regulation today, which is so important. Are
Mhm.
you more about the mind-body connection?
Yeah, I'm really focused on getting folks to be very in tune with what is the mind up to, the 70,000 thoughts a day,
Yeah.
and where are your triggers. This
Yeah.
is kind of like the step one when we begin this journey is where am I feeling the most triggered in my life? And there's going to be some dominant themes that keep showing up, which, I've been doing this for 20 years, and the themes are around your own personal relationships, your own personal health, your career, and your finances. And so
Yeah.
when you start to recognize all these trigger points, you have to, start to bring that relationship inward. And then there's a whole dynamic to how do I start to engage with these triggers in a way where they don't, disrupt my ability to feel the best I want to feel.
Yes. Okay. So I've definitely talked about triggers before, but for somebody who's new to that, let's define it. But I just this is so
Hmm.
timely. And this is what I love about life. Literally last night on social, I did a post about, because a lot of people fall into victim mindset, blaming, complaining,
Totally.
projecting. And I'm not, have you ever heard of Peter Crone?
I have, yeah.
So, Peter Crone's infamous quote is people and circumstances come into our life to reveal where we're not healed. So, the
Hmm.
reason I bring this up
Totally.
is last night I was talking about triggers. And for me, that trigger, when you feel that knee jerk reaction, want to defend whatever emotions are being come up, like it is a gift. That person is a gift to you. So,
Totally.
before we go there, can you define trigger? What are we talking about?
Yeah. Well, essentially, it's the patterned learning of your own mind, your brain, learning a moment in your life that has created stress in the past. The brain creates these thoughts that keep us locked into these pattern ways of reacting, fight or flight reaction, because
Mm,
the brain wants to get access to the adrenaline of the response. And so most things in our lives are coming from your brain learning how to pattern you into being reactive to it, being a source of a trigger. And so if we don't remove ourselves from the equation and recognize that the brain is separate on its own, doing its own thing, and we can actually start to work with it versus owning all these 70,000 thoughts and living the stories based off of those thoughts as who we are,
yeah.
you're just a fraction of your possibilities.
Let's give some common triggers.
Well, in the parenting world, it's so easy. Most of my clients are parents, busy dads, busy moms, and again, they're in this state of burnout. They're in the state of that daily grind. It just feels so grindy, grindy, grindy. And so the dominant stressors and triggers are going to come from the dominant adult themes again. They're going to come from your kids. When your kids are fighting, you're going to be triggered. You wake up in the morning and you got to get out the door super fast. You got to make the lunches. They're screaming and yelling. You got to get them out the door. They won't put on their socks properly. Ooh, it's a very intense experience for parents. Then the resentment to each other starts to kick in and you start feeding off each other, not realizing it's your brain learning that you're a source of trigger. So proximity is a key one that becomes part of the brain's use of each other to keep us locked in triggers. And so your partner becomes a big trigger. You go to work and you're interacting with other human beings that are also having their own triggering life experience and very reactive. And so now all of a sudden you're having these little confrontations at work, and the whole political structure of whatever your work environment's like starts to become very triggered. Your relationship to food becomes very triggered.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
My understanding for triggers are a lot of times suppressed emotions.
Yeah.
So can we talk about, for example, I'll just give one because I had this conversation over the weekend with a girlfriend.
Mm.
And I think especially interpersonal or romantic relationships are huge triggers for people. But, so she's currently dating, and here were her triggers. So she felt rejected.
Mm,
And I know at the bottom root of that is not enough. So a lot of people, if you feel rejected from somebody, then it's not safe and I'm not enough. And then you down spiral and into the monkey mind. And let's talk about when people are feeling these reactive states, triggered, emotional response, stress is on. What can we do in the moment to
yeah.
stop those patterns?
Well, and this is the beauty, is that we do have the ability to do that. And you're right. I mean, the patterns and most of these are coming from an internal disruption from our childhood experience.
Mm,
And so the one thing that we're not taught as children and as parents is the power of regulation, the power of working with your own nervous system to teach your brain to let go of the use of that stressor. And so, I grew up in a household where I didn't have much love from my dad. He was very absent, and quite often would, there'd be some names he would say here and there that, I realized quite a few years later when we were out for lunch one day and he asked me about my son. He said, "Oh, is your son a crybaby too?" And all of a
wow.
sudden, if like the emotion was like, "Oh my God, I know that emotion so deeply ingrained," but yet it was hidden in there,
Mm,
which is what a lot of us do. And we put up the shield and guard ourselves from feeling that kind of pain. And so we snuff our ability to feel our own emotions. Well, that manifests on itself. And as that manifests on itself, we go into our teens having these certain life experiences of self-esteem, self-worth, shame, and guilt, looping patterns. We don't know how to work with our own brain,
yeah.
and teaching our brain to let go of the use of our fight or flight around it.
Yeah.
And so we become a fraction of who we're capable of, because we're stuck avoiding ourselves and not wanting to feel hurt. And then we project onto others as we get into our later years. And then our communication is all off in relation to how we have relationships with each other.
Yeah.
So what do? Well, the beauty is, and I'm not knocking therapy and counseling and psychologists and all that stuff, but we don't have to go back into the past to figure it all out.
Right.
At least in my experience. And I've been doing this again for 20 years.
Right.
It's about giving your nervous system the
Yeah.
space that it needs to heal, recover, and start to thrive. And to do that, there's some very specific practices that we can start to incorporate every day that allow that to happen.
Okay, let's pause there. So, what
Yeah.
you're talking about, I want people to understand because we're fully immersed in this.
Yeah.
But somebody listening to this, you have to realize that you have years of conditioning, patterns, behaviors. Much of them are unconscious,
Yeah.
or what we talk about in the subconscious, right? So, I call those, I think of our mind as a garden, and those are the weeds.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, we didn't know how to deal with them then. We were never taught these things.
Yeah.
And what I understand is if you try to dig back to the past, all you're doing is reliving and sitting even more in those emotions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Which
So
is not the worst thing to do
yeah,
if you understand that the number one priority is to heal what that is. And the only way to do that is to provide space for the nervous system to come back online from the calm, rest and digest parasympathetic state. Predominantly, most of our lives have been lived in either a low reactive fight or flight or extreme reactive fight or flight. And so we just really become numb to our own emotions because we don't have the full scope of the ability to play with our emotions when we're living this way, when we're just stuck in our 70,000 thoughts, being so reactive to everything. We have moments of peace, moments of quiet, moments of, oh, that felt kind of nice. But then boom, we're right back on it. I got things to do. I got to do this. I got to do that. And as soon as there's this inclination to rest, again, another pattern kicks in for most of us where it's like, well, I'm not resting. Resting means I'm lazy. Resting means I'm useless. Resting means it's like, oh my God, but that's the way in.
right.
You have to honor that and learn how to cultivate that space with rest so that we can then bring things back online so that we actually feel what it feels like to thrive.
Mm. Okay, before we go there, can we talk about since we're not taught how to do these things naturally, and a lot of people wait until they get to their adulthood because things have gotten so bad. They're like, I'm seeking peace, I'm seeking change. But let's just pay attention to we've now created a pattern of living in a stressed out state. And because our body can't handle stress full time, that's why we lead to our numbing addictions and patterns, scrolling, eating, drinking, sex, shopping, all those numbing agents, which just keep us stuck in this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
So what's the way out?
We need to train the muscle of our nervous system to be at peace. So the main muscle in that interaction essentially is the vagus nerve. And so being able to grow the strength of the way that your heart communicates with your brain in everyday life, not just in a morning meditation, not just in a fitness program you're trying to squeeze in. This is about working with the moments of life all day, because the relationship between your brain and your nervous system is happening all day.
Yeah.
So we need to have these initial practices that allow us to strengthen the communication between the heart and the brain, which happens through the vagus nerve. And when we do that well, then the first thing you will notice, and the only thing I tell my clients that they should be focused on as a result at the first stage of this process, is the feeling of what peace and calm and presence feels like for you, and learning to embrace that as a place that is okay to embrace. Now so I have the 6-step process I call the Unleash Your Energy Roadmap. I mentioned it before. So the idea with this is paying attention to where you're feeling triggered, learning to reset the trigger so that you're in that state of peace and calm. And that's essentially step 1. And step 2 is, where am I feeling triggered? Now let's bring in the calm. The calm is a very specific breath practice. And the breath practice came from my climbing experience, learning how to reset my fight or flight in the real moments that I was in a fight or flight. Mm. And we know there's thousands of different breath practices out there. When I found this, I was like, oh my God, I can reset my own stress response right away in the moment. It takes under a minute to do. This is pretty powerful. Nobody ever told me I could do this. And again, I was put on Ritalin when I was a kid for ADHD, and I was bouncing off the walls and really impulsive. Nobody ever once said, hey, Adam, you can actually regulate how you're responding to things. Mm-hmm. And so when I first discovered this 20 years ago, I said, okay, I'm going to bring this into the one area that I'm being triggered the most. And for me back then, it was my sugar addiction. I was pre-diabetic. I was overweight. I said, okay, I'm learning how to reset my stress response when I climb. I wonder if I can do this in the other areas that I'm feeling stressed out. I brought it to my sugar addiction. And immediately I was transforming my brain's use of sugar, because in the moments I was reaching for the cookies, which was my big one, I would pause, as I would do on the climbing wall, and I would do this reset breath practice, teaching my brain through my nervous system to let go of the use of sugar as a source of energy. All of a sudden, the heart came back online, and my craving shifted into a place where I now had choice. That was it. I didn't have to eliminate anything. I didn't have to give up the sugar. I just had to create the space to have the power of my own choice and not be so reactive. And so the breath practice, I call it heart flow. It's based off of what's known as heart rate variability, HRV. It's a 33-second breath practice, 4 seconds in, 7 seconds out, 4 in, 7 out, 4 in, 7 out. You're doing a rotation of 3 times. And in the process, if you keep the rhythm nice and clean, through the nose in, out through the mouth or nose, what it does in the neuroscience of this is it resets how the brain is operating, puts you back in your parasympathetic nervous system, and gives you back your cognitive and critical thought. That's kind of key, which then produces this space for choice. And the more we practice this breath practice, 33 seconds at a time throughout the day, you're now training the muscle of your own nervous system to be more coherent in the heart frequency.
Yeah.
And the result is, it's obvious. As long as you're not being fixated on, okay, this is going to solve everything. It's going to give me my weight loss. It's going to give me back my quality of sleep. It's going to do this. It's going to do this. It is going to do all that. But at first, you just want to start to really embrace what it feels like to rest and recover. And then you get to play with it.
So here's what's coming to mind, because I know this stuff works. I know the power of this. I've experienced it. And here's what I want people to know. Change is possible. And I've done a complete 180. I call myself a recovering type A. I was on all the time, 7 days a week, work, social life, busy. I was constantly busy because I didn't want to sit alone in my thoughts. I am now at a space of, I love solitude. I crave meditation. I crave stillness. I don't need the TV on for background noise. But this is a lot of kind of what I wrote down here is it's a lot of self-awareness.
Yeah.
It's a new state of being. And what I've heard from people doing this work is because the body is craving, right? We're addicted to the stress and these emotional triggers. We're so addicted to it that I heard one client tell me, when I sit still, I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin.
Yeah.
So
common.
What do you recommend and offer people to like sit through the fire of discomfort? You got to retrain. This is normal because it's new and unknown, but like this is the way out.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a couple of things that need to happen for this to be more successful. And again, I'm mindful of all my words. And obviously we know everything we think and everything we say has a frequency to it.
Yes.
You can't do this alone.
Yeah.
You're not meant to do it alone. You're meant to do it inside of a space, a container of co-regulation. You need others' regulated frequency, regulated emotions to be able to support you in your ability to sit in yours. Because otherwise it's just there's so much friction possible there, so many opportunities for the brain to try and self-sabotage, and it does not want you to learn how to be at peace. It doesn't. And it's a threat, because all of a sudden, if you stop reacting to your kids in the morning, the way their kids are fighting, and they're learning off of their own brain's love of the fight or flight, and so now you're fighting with them and reacting. Well, now you're all living a fraction of the beauty that's possible in your family dynamic. Well, all of a sudden you become the beacon of light. You're regulating in those moments, feeling at peace in those moments, noticing the kids, not trying to change anything, just being in your own regulation. Well, now that changes how they interact. My kids now are 9 and 11. They get this stuff. It's not perfect, but it's pretty amazing how they know that the only thing we focus on is regulation. Everything manifests from there, everything. And so when we're in that space and they're all of a sudden looking at me and going, oh my God, Dad's not reacting anymore. Oh boy. Well, my brain at first gets upset and says, well, no, you should react. Come on, I want the energy. Start fighting back. And then I'm like, well, hold on, monkey mind. I know what you're doing. Yeah. I'm not feeding you anymore. I used to feed you all day, every day. I know how to separate myself now. I'm disciplined on teaching you to be okay, relax. But now the dynamic changes where others around you are going to recognize, oh, so you're not reacting anymore? Okay, well, I'm not. Their brain learns that you're no longer a source. So now their brain starts to use other opportunities, like for siblings, they use each other a lot more.
Yeah.
Someone's got to be the one that does the work. Right. And hold space for the opportunity for others to feel in. And so when you go on this journey into exploring how to optimize your own emotional frequency, you need to do it in an environment that optimizes co-regulation. And again, I'm for anybody who's hearing this and is seeking out a coach or a therapist or a mentor of any kind, and I can tell that, Heather, that you hold this space. It's really important that before you go and you spend your time, energy, and money, you want to know if that person understands what co-regulation is all about.
Yeah.
And knows how to hold that in their own lives. Because if not, that's not the person you should choose to hang out with,
Right.
especially in this kind of a role.
Well, 100%. And my big thing, and I have it written on my computer as a daily reminder that I have to demonstrate. I have to practice what I preach because
Mhm.
otherwise then we're in misalignment.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what you're really saying. What I understand is how important self-regulation is because we can go from survival mode into thriving. And now I want to talk about the flip side because you've touched on it, and this is my jam. This is the stuff I love.
Yeah.
Is let's talk quantum physics and manifestation. And I love, do you know Dr. Bruce Lipton?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love Dr. Bruce Lipton always says that our life is a printout of our subconscious programming. And
Hmm.
so a lot of people, if you're struggling financially, relationally, in your health, we have been programmed to think, well, I have to try harder. I have to
Yeah.
work harder. I have to, Gary V, and I think he's changed his content marketing, but Gary was all about if you just hustle and grind 36 hours a day, you will get ahead 20 years from now. I promise you.
Yeah.
And I never related to that content.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
let's talk about we can, and it is possible for every single human to go from survival to thriving.
Yeah.
How do we do it?
Yeah. And so we need to know that there's stages to this,
Yeah.
right? And so as a human being, you're going to go through some stages. The first stage is you have to honor rest. And that's going to have a very powerful energy to it. You're going to feel this internal angst, but at the same time, this internal space to explore your own emotions that have been really held in whatever corner. Like for me, it's like this very, very tight little pocket of my heart kind of just held on very tightly for a lot of these emotions that I didn't want to feel again. And as I went through this process and all of a sudden opened up,
Mm.
you feel differently and you're so much more connected. One thing I've manifested, and we'll talk about the manifestation, and one thing that my clients manifest a lot more of is time in nature. So we'll chat about that, but that's the first phase, is being able to feel at peace and feel at calm and feel what presence feels like for you. The beauty of doing the heart flow breath practice, and again, when I start this process, I get my clients 3 times or more a day. That's it. That's less than 2 minutes a day. It's all you need.
Mm.
What begins to happen is there's 2 things that happen immediately. One is a cognitive reset. So you start to think cleaner and clearer. You start to get more motivation. You start to feel more empowered about how you spend your time. Then you also have the biological, the body impacts, a decrease of inflammation, a hormonal balancing that happens. Mitochondrial energy starts to be more efficient. Your digestion shifts, all from holding space for your nervous system to be at peace. Okay, that's the beauty. The extension of this is the ability to start to feel your own emotions and be able to start to play with the emotions you do want.
Mm.
Now, this is where the magic, for me, I didn't see this coming. I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. So all I have to do is continue to reset my response to the things that are happening in my life. Be mindful of what's triggering me. Okay, I don't need fight or flight right now. I'm not being chased by a crazy dog that wants to bite my face off, or I am on the side of a wall rock climbing and I want to make sure that I'm doing this efficiently because I could get hurt. Okay, in the moment you need it, you need it. If you don't need fight or flight, we have to reset it. And when we reset it, it gives us the opportunity to start to play with our own emotions. And so this is where the vision work comes in, the intention work. Starting to work with your thoughts and your words in ways that produce certain emotions that you do want to have. And so there's a process I go through with my clients that drives them deeper into their heart around how they do want to feel around their kids, how they do want to feel with their partner and their family dynamics, and how much more nourishing and how much more intimacy always comes up. It's like the constant one is I want to have a sense and feeling with more intimacy. And that's not just sexually with your partner, but it's intimacy with the kids and just feeling more loved and more nourished and more joyful. And so we need to get clear on the emotional frequency of that. Because if we understand the relationship between the neuroscience, the neuroplasticity of the brain, and the quantum physics of the nervous system.
Yeah.
Now you're playing in a realm that you're unstoppable. And
Okay.
that's what we want.
Two things are coming to mind. What I really hear from you is, because we're not used to doing this, it's creating presence. And by doing the breath work, by being mindful, by being intentional, when we're so present, then we take all our power back. That's what I am gaining, right?
You gain your power back, and you gain it back in the realm of your emotional being, your ability to
Yeah.
feel the emotions you like to feel. And it manifests on itself. You start to find your time being spent in what I call extended acts of self-love. The more you reset, it's the most powerful, frequency based. The intention of it is the most powerful act of self-love possible. So there's so much power behind it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I'm going to go on another diet and that intention is going to be the most powerful intention because I'm going to eat healthier and I'm going to make sure that I'm really waking up and I'm having my 4:30, 5 o'clock wake up and I'm doing my exercises and it's like, good luck. If it creates a stress response, man, you're in trouble. If it's coming from a manifestation and it flows into your life, now you know, okay. Like when food showed up for me, I was like, oh my God, I am a painter in my kitchen. All of a sudden, it's like every day I'd go in my kitchen, I'd be like, it's like a fresh canvas of paint. I knew what I was doing all of a sudden. That was a manifestation. I was extending the time. I was able to be inside of my own self-love frequency. And it just showed up in the form of food. And I became very good at prepping plant-based cuisine and became, I was a chef at the Deepak Chopra Addiction Center for a few years. I wrote the best-selling book all around my exploration into food. This all came from a manifestation of my own emotions.
What I'm picking, I'm so visual. So I just have to share this vision because you're painting, kitchen, whatever. And I also love cooking and baking. I love it.
Yeah, so great.
But I also love eating. But anyway, what you're sharing. So what I visualized is somebody, when we're closed off, when we're guarded, we're living in flight or fight, we're very constricted. That's how, or even imagine your fist very tight, very closed, and nothing can get in. Everything we desire can't get in because we're so constricted.
Yeah.
But by doing this work and creating presence, we now allow and open our palms up to this reciprocity, right? This give and receive. And I think of life as a boomerang. What we put out, we get back. But you've touched on it a few times, so maybe we could talk a little bit more because I love this stuff. Nikola Tesla has an infamous quote, and he says, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, vibration.
Yeah.
So can we talk about a higher level, understanding consciousness and the mind body, the emotion body? And because when we're talking manifestation, what we put out, we get back. It's actually very easy when you get the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And my understanding, it is my own understanding. It's my own experience. And I used to say, well, I'm kind of selfish in this way. I just like feeling really freaking great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I still like feeling really freaking great, but now I've gotten to the point where what makes me feel really freaking great is to help others to feel really great.
Yeah.
And that's been the ultimate manifestation.
Yeah.
And so we all know that being in service is what we crave. It's a human need. We want interaction with each other, but it's not a surface level or subconscious, like, I really wish I could be in service more. And it becomes very much of a self-sabotaging experience where we do give ourselves to everybody else because we don't have the capacity to look after ourselves, or we fear going inward. So we just help everybody else.
Oh.
But there's a capacity to this where when we do this work, we do open ourselves up in a way where this idea of co-regulation pops in. And when I discovered co-regulation, that was when I realized, wow, manifestation, which is the ultimate experience as a human being, is to know how you just manifested something into your life and have such clarity to go, wow, I created that with my own emotional frequency.
Yeah.
That feels very much like when I sit inside of my calm present state and I feel into how I love my life and how wonderful things are, boom, all of a sudden my kids come up and grab me from behind with big hugs. I love you, Daddy. I'm so mindful of not getting locked in my own head around it,
Yeah.
but getting locked in my heart.
Mm.
And I'm very present in those emotions to go, in the moment celebration, which is just acknowledgement to the universe to say, yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. And what you realize when you honor that and you keep it locked into the reality of what it is, which is your own emotions, you have the ability to start to build your life based off of having it be one big emotional adventure.
Yes.
Right. And
Well, and I love,
there has been two dominant manifestations that have shown up for myself and my clients that come from this process. And I mentioned one earlier. One was the manifestation of more time in nature.
mm,
A lot of my clients have found that when they do this work, more of their lives begin to naturally unfold where they're spending more of it outside. Wow. It's like, of course it does, because if we understand the Earth's magnetic field
yeah.
and the power of what it does for our own regulation, it makes sense. And we know it when we take kids outside, caged animals inside, a lot of anxiety, a lot of agitation, a lot of triggering. You go outside and all of a sudden there's more peace and calm. Well, one of my clients, she was telling me how beautiful it's been that she is now able to be a scout leader for her 11-year-old boy, and she spends so much more time outside in nature being a scout leader with her, and how much more time she's spending with her son. And that was never an intention of hers, and it just showed up with ease.
Mm.
The other one is, and this, I know we chatted about this briefly before we got on, but the other one is the manifestation of co-regulating another human being, which for me has been the ultimate exchange of energy, being at peace in my own heart, my own body, in the presence of another human being who I'm now able to give my overflow. And there's an exchange in there in the presence of that I don't know another feeling that's more substantial than that. Mm. And I feel like that's our human way out in terms of where we all can see where life is and how chaotic it is. It's so much as in relation to being able to learn how to regulate and learn how to embrace co-regulation.
I love that you brought up nature. So I heard this term many years ago, but grounding, and I'd never been taught what grounding was. But the reason that I crave it, I crave nature. But the reason we're drawn to, or some people love to, I live in Colorado, so I have the mountains literally in my backyard. Some people love the beach, putting their toes in the sand, literally hugging a tree or hiking in nature. And the reason we crave that and love it is because nature is not in stress. It's not in survival. It is at peace, calm, everything it needs. And we can feel that. Maybe they're unaware of that intellectually, but that's what's going on, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, just you think about barefoot grounding as an example. On the bottom of your foot, you have, what is it, like 1,400 nerve endings per every square inch of your foot. All right. And so if you have a stressed out body, you have a lot of what are called free radicals. And they're, the thoughts we think and the words we say are all creating a lot of the internal free radical response and the cellular damage and the inflammation and the hormonal imbalance. And all of a sudden you just go outside and you put your bare feet on the ground and you're getting what are called free electrons from the earth. And these act like antioxidants. They act like these beautiful molecules that go up into the free radicals and they help decrease inflammation. It's like, oh my God, wait, so putting your bare feet on the ground is one of the most powerful inflammatories you can possibly take. Yeah, you don't need to go for a pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
You just go put your bare feet on the ground and it will help clean up your cells. Not only that, it automatically starts to shift the way your nervous system is operating. And it puts you immediately into a reset back into your parasympathetic state. And
I'm
so
curious.
it's a key part to daily routine is to try to find ways to ground, because it teaches you the feeling that you're after, because that's the feeling you want to cultivate a deeper relationship with.
That's what I wanted to ask you on that note, because there's so many modalities, gazillions of things out there.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's one right way. Figure out what works for you. But I'd
Yeah.
love to know, what are some of your daily rituals that you're doing to stay mindful, present, create this calm and ease?
Yeah, well, and this is the practice, right? So every day we have to be willing to recognize that we're in a modern society that is so over the top, creating stressful possibilities, right? And a lot of them we don't even see, like the use of our cell phones. Yeah, we know it's stressful, but we don't even realize that the Wi-Fi on it disrupts the nervous system. The lighting on it, the lights that you have in your house, as soon as you wake up in the morning, you turn on your lights, you're now in a fight or flight stress response.
Mm.
So we need to know the playing field. That's got to be number one. We have to understand that modern society is set up for us to be triggered. Okay, that's number one. So now we need to start to set up our lives where that's the game. The game is to notice the triggers and learn to work with them, learn to reset them. And so my morning starts off right away. And I have in my book, The Power of Food, I write about this concept of my first 10. So the first 10 minutes of my day, not a new concept. We understand all this, Tony Robbins and his priming estate, and everybody talks about their morning routines. It's critical. My morning routine really focuses on resetting immediately, getting inside of the frequency of the emotions I do want. And
Mm.
so I have had in the past, I've had vision rooms. Started off with a statement on my wall that turned into a vision board that ended up being vision room.
Cool.
It's pretty neat because when you learn how to play with your own emotions, you realize, wow, there's something legit about working with your emotions in this way. But so having a morning routine is critical to get your energy in the right place. So I'll go outside. I will put my bare feet on the ground. I'll get the morning sunlight in my eyes, which is critical for hormonal balancing. It's also where melatonin production begins. It's not a nighttime thing. Yes, it's happening at night, but in the morning is when your melatonin production begins. So getting outside, getting barefoot, breathing a heart flow, feeling into the emotions of how I want things to be. My eyes are closed, my hands on my heart, and I'm connecting to the beauty of my life. I'm playing the movie in my own mind.
Yeah.
And then I make a point of going into my house and being very present with my family, getting very much in their energy, not in my mind's desire to get busy, which is where most of us will go. And that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my best to just be there for them so that they feel safe in their own emotions and feel loved in their own emotions. And then as day goes on, my only commitments are to continuing to practice heart flow when I'm noticed I'm being triggered, to continue to push my mind into the moments where I'm on the leading edge of it wanting to tell me, no, it's not possible. So I'll always find an activity throughout the day. I'm a big mountain biker. My joy of mountain biking comes from the ability to push myself on the up. I love the down, but it's the up. And so 3-4 times a week, that's my go-to. Is I'm getting out on my bike. I live in a town called Squamish. We have some of the world's best mountain biking right outside the door. And I'm on my bike pushing my mind to the edge of what my mind is telling me is possible, and regulating my nervous system. And then I come home and I'm in it. I'm in the frequency. It's so amazing.
Well, and even on that note, so doing the mountain biking, you're training yourself to feel the resistance, the discomfort, and go through it.
We have to
Yeah.
keep finding these opportunities. For my kids, we have a slack line in our backyard. They go on a slack line. It's another way using a sport to utilize presence, utilize your breath,
Yeah.
and push yourself into a state of more presence so that you know it as an emotional experience that you can actually grow from. And if we don't know how to do it ourselves, you can't give it to your kids because it just doesn't exist. You have to be able to support the regulation for them to come inward, to explore their own ability to expand what's possible in their own minds.
Yeah.
Art is another great one, though. Getting your kids into art, getting them into music, anything that will push their minds into trying to get them to quit, but in your ability to co-regulate them through it,
Yeah.
they'll learn how to be passionate about something. And we need to feel more passionate about things when we're young so that we can learn the dynamics of working with that kind of an emotion.
This work is so powerful. And I feel like we could talk for hours and we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. But you've given a lot of, I feel, golden nuggets today. What do you believe is a key takeaway you want listeners to get?
I would say at the top of the top is presence,
Yeah.
right? The brain loves to operate in the past, the depressive thinking, loves to operate in the future, the anxious thinking.
Yeah.
If 70,000 thoughts a day are being produced and most of those are here and here, well, let's just start to work with the ability to flip the script and dominantly work from here, presence, and occasionally go here and here. But when you know how to work with this place, the presence of the moment, that's where everything is experienced in life. And your power and your ability to hold that, it's important that we know that it's possible biologically to train that into us in modern society, but it needs the right tools in the right order, and it needs the right support structure.
Yes, I love this. All right, so I'd love to wrap up the interview, and I have a few rapid fire questions for you.
Let's do
What
it.
What is a quote or motto that you live by?
That's a good one. What is a quote or motto that I live by? I've been saying a lot over the last few years, but being a student of my own behavior has shown up a lot. Take ownership.
I call it like radical self-responsibility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What is a book you're currently reading or highly recommend?
I am in the middle of, like you mentioned, David Goggins when we spoke. I have read his book, which I thought was great, but I'm reading a book called Endure. It's by Cameron Hanes. He's the world's best bow hunter, and I'm a big fan of how he has optimized his daily abundance. And a lot of it is through nervous system regulation through bow hunting.
Cool.
Yeah,
Sounds
it's
that.
awesome.
Final question. What advice would you give your younger self?
Just chill out, relax. Everything's going to be okay. Take it easy.
Yes. And such a great note to end on. Adam, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah. Thanks for having me again, Heather. I appreciate it.